You've been lied to since you were a kid. Movies, teachers, even well-meaning friends taught you the same script. If you like her, show her. Chase her. Prove yourself. But here's the truth no one tells young men. The harder you chase someone, the more you silently announce that you have nothing better to do with your life. Attraction dies the moment your world starts orbiting hers. Because chasing isn't confidence. Chasing is fear wearing a cheap disguise. Psychology has a name for this: anxious attachment. It's that emotional hunger that whispers, if I don't try harder, she'll leave. If I don't impress her, I'll lose her. So you text faster. You explain more. You bend. You break. And somehow, she seems less interested every time you try. Why? Because human beings are wired to want what feels valuable, and nothing feels less valuable than someone who treats you like oxygen while treating themselves like a distraction. Let me show you a story. There's a man named Arif. Good guy. Smart. Grounded. But the moment he likes someone, he becomes a shadow of himself. Texting paragraphs, checking his phone every few minutes, trying to earn her attention like a student trying to get an A. And she, at first flattered, slowly begins to drift. Not because she's cruel, but because his energy screams one thing: I need you more than I need myself. And that's when interest collapses. Because deep down, people don't want someone who chases them. They want someone who chooses them, but could have chosen 1,000 other things. Here's the rule most men never learn. If you have to chase her, you're already losing yourself. And yet, there's a twist no one expects. The moment you stop sprinting after people, the moment your attention becomes something that must be earned, not given, the entire dynamic flips. But how do you become that kind of man? The kind that doesn't chase because he doesn't need to. For that, we go deeper, into the gravity that pulls people toward you without you taking a single step. There's a strange thing that happens when a man stops orbiting a woman and starts orbiting his own life. Everything shifts. Quietly. Almost invisibly. Because real attraction isn't created through effort or charm or perfect lines. It's created through gravity. Think of gravity for a moment. Planets don't chase the sun. They move because its existence is powerful enough to shape their direction. The same is true for people. When a man's life has weight, a mission, a rhythm, a purpose, others feel it before he even speaks. Psychology calls this self-directed identity, the ability to move through the world with your own momentum instead of waiting for someone to give you permission to exist. Most men don't have this. Not because they're weak, but because they've spent years pouring all their emotional energy outward. Toward approval. Toward validation. Toward someone noticing them. But a man with gravity moves differently. Let me show you. Two men text the same woman. Same looks. Same job. Same level of interest. The first types fast, checks instantly, overthinks every sentence. His life becomes a waiting room for her reply. The second replies when he can. Not out of strategy, but because his hours are already claimed, by his goals, his passions, his standards. The woman feels it immediately. Not consciously. Not logically. But emotionally. One man is available. One man is alive. Who does she lean toward? It's never a mystery. Because people chase what feels anchored, not what feels desperate for connection. And here's the paradox: you don't attract by focusing on attraction. You attract by focusing on becoming someone anchored inside himself. This isn't arrogance. It isn't manipulation. It's simply the truth about human desire. Interest gravitates toward the man who is already in motion. But having gravity isn't enough. Because even strong men lose themselves when they become too predictable, too available, too easily understood. There is a psychological force far older than dating advice. And it determines who becomes unforgettable. To understand it, we need to explore the power of scarcity, and why the most magnetic men aren't everywhere. They are intentionally somewhere else. Scarcity, a simple word, a dangerous force. Human beings don't value what's always within arm's reach. We value what we can't fully possess, what we can't predict, what we can't completely understand. Not because we're shallow, but because mystery creates emotional electricity. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most men kill their own attractiveness by being too available, too open, too ready. They don't mean to. They believe they're showing interest, loyalty, consistency. But in the psychology of desire, certainty kills curiosity. When someone knows exactly where you are, what you're doing, how you feel about them, and that you'll always respond instantly, there is nothing left to discover. No tension, no question, no spark. It's not manipulation. It's human wiring. Let me show you with a story. Bilal used to reply instantly to every message, day or night. He thought it was respect, effort, investment. But to others, it read as something else. No matter what you do, I'll always be here, waiting. After months of being taken for granted, he made a quiet shift. Not a game, not a trick. He simply stopped making himself emotionally available on demand. He stopped performing for attention. He didn't send good morning texts like clockwork. He didn't rush to reply mid-workout. He didn't narrate his entire day just to fill silence. And suddenly, people who barely noticed him started leaning in. Not because he changed his personality, but because he changed his accessibility. Psychology has a name for this. Intermittent availability. Not toxic absence. Not strategic silence. Just a man living a full life that doesn't pause for external validation. Because mystery is not about withholding. It's about having a life that no one fully sees. And here's the rule most men never hear. When you stop making yourself constantly available, people stop taking you emotionally for granted. But scarcity alone isn't power. It's just the beginning. Because now, she's curious. She's wondering. She's paying attention. But what happens when curiosity meets boundaries? That's where the dynamic flips completely. Most men don't lose women because they're unattractive. They lose them because they refuse to draw a line. A boundary is not anger, not dominance, not manipulation. It's simply the quiet truth about what you will and will not tolerate. But men who chase never set boundaries. They negotiate. They justify. They shrink themselves hoping she'll stay. Respect dies in that moment. Because nothing is less attractive than a man who abandons himself to keep someone else. Let me show you. There's a guy named Saad. Soft-spoken, loyal, patient. But every time he dated someone, he carried a silent fear. If I say no, she'll leave. So he accepted last-minute cancellations. He tolerated disrespect disguised as jokes. He forgave patterns that should have ended the connection months earlier. He wasn't kind. He was afraid. And fear is never seductive. One day, after being ignored for the third time in a row, Saad finally felt something break inside him. Not anger. Not revenge. Just exhaustion. So he did what he'd never done before. He stopped explaining himself. He stopped chasing clarity. He stopped performing emotional CPR on a dead effort. He simply said, "No, this doesn't work for me." And he meant it. The reaction was instant. The same person who treated him like an option suddenly wanted answers. Suddenly cared. Suddenly felt the weight of losing someone who'd always been available. Because boundaries do something extraordinary. They expose who truly values you, and who only values your obedience. A boundary isn't meant to make her chase. It's meant to protect the man you are becoming. Here's the rule card for this chapter. A man who can walk away holds more power than a man trying to be chosen. But there is one final shift. One that flips the entire story. Because the goal is not to get women to chase you. The real goal is far more dangerous. And far more liberating. It's becoming the kind of man who doesn't need to be chased at all. Everything you've heard so far leads to this moment. The point where attraction is no longer a game, but a reflection of the man you've become. Because here's the truth no one says out loud. A man who needs to be chased is still controlled by the world outside him. A man who doesn't need it is finally free. When you stop chasing validation, something strange happens. Your energy changes. Your presence sharpens. You stop bending for affection and start standing in your identity. This isn't arrogance. It's security. The same psychological shift we see in securely attached individuals. People who don't cling, don't beg, don't overinvest. They move with calmness because their worth isn't up for negotiation. And when a man reaches that state, women don't just like him. They feel safe around him. They feel drawn. They feel chosen, not by desperation, but by discernment. Let me show you a final vignette. Daniel once lived for attention. Every message, every compliment, she viewed your story, felt like a heartbeat. It controlled him. But over time, he built a different life. A life filled with meaning that existed whether anyone applauded or not. He lifted. He read. He built his career. He repaired the parts of his identity that relied on attention to breathe. And then something shifted. He stopped performing. Stopped chasing. Stopped living in reaction to other people's opinions. The next time he dated, he didn't cling. He didn't bend. He didn't try to prove he was enough. He simply lived. And let her see who he really was. And she chased him. Not because he tried to be high value. Not because he tricked her with strategies. But because he embodied something women rarely encounter. A man who chooses from abundance. Not desperation. A man whose presence has gravity. A man whose boundaries are real. A man whose attention must be earned. Not begged for. Here's the final rule card. Don't try to be wanted. Become someone who chooses. Because the men women chase aren't the loudest, or the richest, or the most charming. They're the ones who have a life so full, so grounded, so meaningful, that being with them is a privilege, not a rescue mission. And now the story turns back to you. Not who you like, not who you want, but who you're willing to become. When validation is no longer the prize.